Adult Swim is one of the coolest programming blocks around. Just a good bunch of funny and weird shows to come out of it. Ever since Rick and Morty's explosion within popular culture, I think the network has garnered a bit more respect. At the time of making this, they even went out and presented an Emmy. I can't imagine any other Adult Swim property giving out that award. Could you imagine Master Shaker the Monarch going out on stage and giving the Best Sound Design award? Actually, that'd be pretty cool. I see a lot of posts and videos that are very retrospective on the block, and that's cool, but I started thinking about it too. And I thought, oh yeah, there's a good portion of their original animated shows that just suck complete ass, especially around that end of the 2000s and early 2010s era. Move those pre-established shows and live action shit, get them out of here. Let's briefly go over some of these. Titan Maximum, Mongo Wrestling Alliance, King Star King, Mr. Pickles, that weird, not very good Aqua Teen spinoff of those fruit characters that weirdly changed into sports equipment. I felt like a lot of the worst of Adult Swim came out during this period. And outside of maybe like 3 shows during this time that I sort of liked or was indifferent to, the reception to their new original programming was fairly negative for me, and I feel like those older shows really carried. They have been faring better now, like the previously mentioned Rick and Morty. They actually have shows that are surprisingly good, like Mike Tyson's Mysteries, which a show I forget about most times but get happy when I'm reminded of it, and one of my favorites of this year, Ballmasters. But they will still make some underwhelming shit, like Hot Streets featuring Justin Roiland, cause Nick is hot right now, so you gotta make it explicitly clear that he plays the noise-making dog in the show. And The Jellies, coming off a Tyler the Creator album I liked, managed to probably be the least interesting thing he's done, even with the power of animation at his disposal. So unfortunately, at the request of 3 people on Patreon, the Drinky Crow Show falls into that underwhelming to bad category of Adult Swim original programming. Who the fuck is Drinky Crow? Why does his design look pretty good and oddly familiar? Well, Drinky Crow used to be a character in Tony Millionaire's real name, by the way, comic called Mockies. They were like these dark comics that Millionaire would make for newspapers, and most of the punchline of the comics would be about how Drinky Crow is a sad alcoholic and him committing suicide and blowing his brains out, with a mix of gross out here or there. Or other side character, Uncle Gabby, being a disgusting lowlife. It has some crude humor in there that's actually pretty funny, but sometimes it's very hit or miss. I don't think there was a comic in there that made me look like I was about to piss myself like all the comic friends Millionaire had in his promotion for his latest book. But after reading maybe like 30 comics of Mockies, I found it kind of repetitive, and its repetitiveness and offensive and crude humor is kind of what became its demise according to previous main publication, the City Paper, when they shit-canned the comic after certain comics not gelling well with the staff. Which, to say Millionaire was not happy about his mildly controversial comic being scrapped, was not pleased, would be an egregious understatement. But before any of that fallout, Millionaire did get his comic Mockies animated once, and it was by a pretty big show.
It's Saturday Night Live.
So Saturday Night Live actually ordered little flash animations of Millionaire's comic back in the late 90s, but those shorts ended up being cut and surviving only on compilation DVDs. Later though, Millionaire got another shot at Drinky Crow being animated when the always open Adult Swim ran its Night of 1,000 Pilots. Which, no, there was not actually 1,000 pilots. Saying Night of 5 Pilots wouldn't sound so interesting for a TV special, which these premiered as. Out of the 5 pilots, which were obviously Drinky Crow, Super Jail, That Crooked Sip, which eventually became Freaknik, Fat Guy Stuck on the Internet, and Let's Fish. Drinky Crow was one of the leading pilots in the online poll Adult Swim was running on their website, which, not too surprising, it has a little cult following. All the shows that were on the poll did get greenlit, except for one that I liked the most, and that was Let's Fish. I thought it was a cool live-action animated hybrid, and I would have loved to see at least one season, or maybe even a couple episodes. But it was one of those necessary deaths, because if it was made, shows like Moral Oral or Metalocalypse would have been compromised due to its creation, because it was made by both creators. So, Let's Fish, or Moral Oral, or Metalocalypse. I think we have a clear answer to that one. Oh shit, we gotta make this quick. Actually, the fucking bald guy that's in the boat with him, that's not actually the creator of Moral Oral, that's Scott Adset. He is the co-producer, co-writer, co-director of the show. Basically, if he was gone, the show had been a little bit different. Also, he plays that fucking stupid robot from Big Hero 6.
His name is Baymax, you gorgeous moron!
Still though, as a pilot, I would have much rather watched what could have been Let's Fish than the pilot of Drinky Crow because it's just bad, and the main show really isn't that much of an improvement. The reason I don't really like the Drinky Crow show is it is one of those dime a dozen Adult Swim shows where the only real fascinating aspect about it is really how violent or grotesque that it can be. And I love violence within some of the media that I consume. All the shows that I would say are at the top of my list, or really at the top of a lot of people's list, include heavy amounts of violence. Sure, they aren't as grotesque or even that gory like a Drinky Crow show, but the reason I like them is that there's other fascinating aspects about them, like the characters within the show or even the setting. Let's look at something more within Drinky Crow's lane. Super Jail, for example. As gory and grotesque as any show on the block. Why does this not get the same treatment? Because there's more to it than just the gore. The weirdness of the twins characters, the way the warden talks and he's actually fun and charming. Super Jail's layout and design just in general, and the main cell, the gore, is presented in a unique way, whereas with Drinky Crow, the gore and humor really ain't doing much for me, and anything outside of that, what is there? Oh, the French naval soldiers are gators. Look at that. And besides Uncle Gabby and Drinky Crow themselves, there are barely, if at all, any forms of supporting characters in the show really worth mentioning. They are barely even present, and when they aren't saying anything memorable or will stick with me. The fat seal in the first episode left a bigger comedic impact than anyone else in this entire series. It really is just Uncle Gabby and Drinky Crow by themselves, and that would be fine and could work, but these characters are not funny enough to carry the entire series by themselves, and personally are not tolerable enough unless they are in their original format they came in. Comics that last maybe 20 seconds. At best, I think Uncle Gabby has funny remarks here and there, but I don't think I want to sit through an entire series of his dumbass escapades. And just to top it off, the style and designs for a lot of the characters just look repulsive. Millionaire has always had intentionally gross looking and weird characters in his comics, but unlike what he's doing, they're not in 3D. It's just like adding an extra layer of ugh. Let's not get this twisted, it is meant to gross people out and it is set in the 19th century at sea, primarily with the Navy, so seeing some fuck ugly people isn't out of nowhere. But it still is just visually unpleasant, and if there was more to this show than this...
Killing and eating a talking monkey!
That's not turning me on at all!
I could get over it, but there really isn't. Though I do think the background art trying to reflect the comics looks actually quite nice, and Drinky Crow and Uncle Gabby in terms of their original designs, which I liked in the comics, do translate pretty well into this style. I think the Drinky Crow show is just an incredibly poor and again, just another Adult Swim show with gore and violence with nothing really going on for it. Just read the comics. The comics were more tolerable than this. Or just watch another Adult Swim show like Metalocalypse or Super Jail. Hey, if you also want me to talk about garbage shows, or, you know, maybe if you love me, maybe a good show, head over to patreon.com/MarsReviews.